Transmission starts now. This is Sean, your host, and I want to welcome you to the first episode of the Nintendo Cove Podcast. On today's episode, we will be talking about the podcast itself. I will be introducing myself, and later on in the show, I'm actually going to talk about my tips and things that I do to collect retro gaming in a modern society. A lot of people use eBay, a lot of people go online to these stores, but I'm going to tell you a couple of tricks that I use to find retro games at a very reasonable price. So sit back, stay tuned, and once again, welcome to the Nintendo Cove Podcast. So allow me to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Sean. I am 47, going on 48. I am a father, and I've been gaming since the early 80s. I believe my first game system that I actually played was the Atari 2600. My brother is a couple years older than me, and he got it for Christmas. So I remember playing Combat and Outlaw with him. It wasn't until later on, I would say the mid 80s, that I was introduced to the Nintendo Entertainment System at my cousin's house. I remember my parents packed me and my brother up in our car, and we went to visit them, and my cousin Ronnie had a brand shining new Nintendo. And the first Nintendo game I ever played was not Mario, it was actually pro wrestling. And I just remember being a kid enamored by the graphics and the sound and the controller itself, which was quite easy for a little child to play. And I guess from there, the rest is history. I just fell in love with Nintendo. I think that a lot of people out there, they love certain things. Like most people love Disney. They love Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, or something like that. I have always been a Nintendo person. And that is the beginning of my story. So I've been a retro game collector since my early 20s. I say that because most of the stuff that I had in my early teens and my childhood were gone. Of course, most of you are probably like me. You went to high school and got into girls, and you pretty much got rid of all of your old stuff, and you kind of wish that you still had it. And that kind of like goes with me with my toys still. I used to have Transformers and a whole collection of G1, but those are a thing of the past, and I wish I still had them, but that's kind of the way things go. So I've been collecting since my 20s. It wasn't until my early 40s that I really dove into hardcore collecting, and that goes outside of Nintendo. I've been collecting Sony, Microsoft, Atari, ColecoVision, and Intellivision. I've really gained a lot of respect for all of the old consoles and games in general. I like to find these things, restore them, and just keep a hold of them. I rarely flip stuff that I buy. I've dabbled in, I guess you could say, gaming journalism. I wouldn't necessarily go too deep. I actually had the privilege of being a gaming journalist in the early 2000s. I worked a couple of years with Next Level Gaming. And then after that, I went on to do my own thing, which was Gaming Console Network and Inside Gaming Online. But I kind of got out of it because, in honesty, Twitch and YouTube pretty much killed websites. And as a society, we would rather just go and watch a video instead of sitting down and reading about a game or game system. So I did that for a little while, and of course, I did the whole living life thing. But all the while, I've always been collecting stuff here and there, and I guess I've collected a pretty vast collection of gaming consoles and systems and video games in general. And I'll go over that later on in future episodes. Talk about some of the rare things that I have. I had the privilege of attending a couple of E3s, and I actually was the Nintendo person for a couple years with NLG. So yeah, I guess you could say that I am a pretty big fan of Nintendo. I have been since I would say the mid 80s, 85, 86, something like that, when I was about 10 or 11 years old. And I've loved them ever since. I've had every system, including the Virtual Boy, and even stuck with them when things were not looking good. Iwata's passing, Wii U's failure. Always been a fan of Nintendo, and I've always carried that flag. So after the break, we're going to talk about some tips for going out and looking for retro games and retro systems without having to pay these high crazy prices that are on eBay and on these retro video game websites. So when we get back, we'll talk about that.
Will you be the one to witness the birth of the incredible Nintendo Entertainment System? The one to play with Rob, the extraordinary video robot, batteries not included. He helps you tackle even the toughest challenge. Will you be the first to raise the incredibly accurate Zapper and play games like Duck Hunt or action-packed Hogan's Alley and high-flying Kung Fu, each sold separately? Will you be the one to experience the Nintendo Entertainment System? Comes with Rob, Zapper, Control Deck, 2 controllers, Gyromite, and Duck Hunt.
Did you see the latest Nintendo newsletter?
Whoa, nice graphics. I'd like to get my hands on that game.
You mean you haven't played it yet? We can play it on my Nintendo Entertainment System. It's The Legend of Zelda, and it's really rad. Those creatures from Ganon are pretty bad. Octoroks, Tektites, Levers, too. But with your help, our hero pulls through. Yeah, go Link, yeah, get Zelda.
Awesome.
Intense.
The Nintendo Entertainment System. Your parents help you hook it up. The Legend of Zelda sold separately.
So now we're going to talk about collecting tips. Everybody has their own different way of collecting retro video games. Most people will just go on eBay and look for something that they want and pick that up. It seems that is becoming more of an expensive route now. And when you have websites like pricecharting.com that tracks eBay prices, it tends to fluctuate. I believe that we're on a downward trend now in terms of collecting. And this comes, we're talking about if you want to collect video game cartridges. There's like different camps. There's the loose collecting. There's complete in box. And now we pretty much have, people collecting sealed copies and getting them graded. I'm not a big fan of grading video games or video game systems in general. I think it's kind of worthless in my opinion. If you're going to collect a video game that you loved when you were a kid, why are you going to have it sitting on your shelf? And I think a lot of it is just for buyers and sellers in general. They want to get something that they could sell for a high price. Me, I'm basically just looking to complete my collection of games that I grew up with, and I'm sure a lot of you are too. So today I'm going to talk about what I do to try to complete my collection. I have, I guess you could say, close to 200 Nintendo games. Back in my mid-20s, I believe I had well over 450 cartridges and just box games in general. When I got married, I got rid of a lot of them. Some of them I wish I still had, but that is the that is the trials and tribulations of trying to collect in modern day gaming. Because, I mean, God, I used to have Bonk's Adventure on the NES. I just had the cartridge, but that thing is going for a ridiculous price now. And I kind of wish I never got rid of it, but hey, you live and you learn. So what do I do? Um, First thing is this: if there's something I really want, um, I do go on eBay, and the reason I do that is because I am looking for something that is uh, complete. I usually pick up games that are missing instructions, so I go on there looking for instructions and try to find the one that's the cheapest, as well as an instruction booklet that actually looks good. Um, One that doesn't have writing all over it, torn pages, bent pages. Another thing is I use eBay for Japanese games, and right now the Japanese game market is pretty cheap, and that is if you order from Japan. Uh, there's a lot of U.S. sellers who are selling Japanese products for a ridiculous price, so you kind of want to steer clear of those. But I do use eBay. I don't use it religiously. Like I said, I just use it for if I need something. That's my go-to place if I need something right then and there. Now, collecting in general, this is what I do. Um, I look at thrift stores, and I'm in the Florida Panhandle, and luckily there is a lot of mom and pop thrift stores around here. I usually try to steer clear of Goodwill. Goodwill is hit and miss. Um, I found that if you go to one Goodwill, they price their games a little different from the other Goodwill. And I don't know who does these pricings. I don't know if people go on eBay and finds like the first price, on a listing, and they never click on the sold button. They just look for, hey, there's a game that went for $100. Let's just put $100 on it and stick it in the counter, the glass counter, the case in the front. So Goodwill used to be good about 10 years ago. Now it's very hit or miss. I try to go to the mom and pop thrift stores, and I do that mainly because a lot of these places don't know what they're selling. Um, I'll give you a good example, and this is kind of like my holy grail find over the past 5 or 6 years. As being in the Florida Panhandle, I have the privilege of also being able to access Alabama, which is the state line is probably about 15, 20 miles from me. And there's a couple of mom and pop thrift stores up there that I go to on a weekly basis. And about a year and a half ago, I went into one and I'm looking around, and I usually frequent the toy section because I'm also looking for loose Transformers and, toys that I had when I was a kid. And I was looking in the toy section, and I look up, and a Rob the Robot is staring back at me. And he's poking out of a white styrofoam box. So I reach up and I pull it down, and it is the complete Rob the Robot. It's got his hands. It's got the little spinners that it comes with. It's got the battery pack. It's basically the bottom half of the Rob the Robot NES box set that came out. And I looked at the price, and it was $2.25. So I took it up to the counter, and yeah, I got a Rob the Robot complete for $2.25. Now, everybody is going to have different experiences. That's the beauty of going on these thrifting finds. You never know what you're going to get. I will give you another example. I went to a thrift store in Niceville, Florida, about a year or two ago, and I'm walking around and I see this guy carrying a Nintendo Power magazine, and I'm like, whoa, wonder where he got that. And I was with my brother at the time, and he pointed down and he said, they're right there. And there was a stack of Nintendo Powers. So I grabbed them all. I grabbed, I would say, about 80 issues, and I took them up to the counter, and I asked the lady, how much are these? And she said, oh, they're free. You could take them. So I ended up getting like 3 years of Nintendo Power magazines for free. it's all about getting out there and looking for this stuff and knowing what you're looking for. So the second place that I go to are yard sales. And yard sales are an early birds game. I don't know how yard sales are in your area, but down here in the Florida Panhandle, you have to get up early because yard sales usually start between 6 and 7 in the morning. And they usually go until the afternoon, 1, 2 o'clock. And they're usually on Fridays and Saturdays. These yard sales they can be a gold mine because usually you have parents whose kids just went off to college and they're trying to get rid of their old video games and video game systems just to get them out of the house. So you can usually find some really good stuff at really good prices at yard sales. It's, again, out of the three things that I'm talking about, it's the one that you really have to jump on because it's basically good just to go online and see where your yard sales are. Look into places and look at pictures because usually people are posting pictures of what they have for sale, and they'll usually have a table full of video games or a box somewhere, and you want to kind of like hone in on the yard sales that have a lot of electronic stuff, because down here you can go to 5 yard sales and 4 of them has just baby clothes and stuff like that, and while you're sitting there looking through that stuff, your competition is out there looking at these yard sales, trying to do the same thing that you're doing. So there's a little bit of competition there for that, but I like doing yard sales. And I've had some success with yard sales. I picked up some really good games for reasonable prices. And then, of course, the third thing is flea markets. Now, flea markets are hit and miss. And sadly, these days, flea markets are kind of like phasing out. Here, we used to have 3 flea markets in the Panhandle, and now we're down to 1, which is in Pensacola. And usually, it is a mixed bag. It is a mixed bag of dealers who are looking to get rid of games for crazy prices. And then you have people just pulling up in their car and trying to get rid of the junk that they have. Those are the people that you want to look at because usually they're just trying to get rid of their stuff and you can get really good prices on those. So flea markets, thrift stores, and of course, yard sales. Those are the 3 things that I do 1 or 2 days a week to try to build up my collection. And I would say that a good 35 to 40% of my collection is from thrifting, yard sales, and flea markets. And I never really had to pay ridiculous prices. And you can also negotiate with some of these people, as opposed to when you walk into a video game store, they're not gonna sell you something for the price lower than the price that they have on the price tag. So are there any tips or, bits of information that you guys have when you do collecting? Do you go onto just retro game websites and buy? Do you go on eBay? Do you also go out there and thrift? I'd like to know. Please give me your feedback. If you're on YouTube or if there's a comment section on this podcast, let me know because I would really like to know, and I would like to hear from other people who collect what you do and how you build your retro video game collection. So I would like to thank you all for tuning in to the first episode of the Nintendo Cove Podcast. Again, this is going to be a work in progress. I'm going to basically mold this podcast into something with every episode that we make. And of course, there's going to be guests coming in the future because sooner or later I'm going to run out of things to say to myself. So, but I appreciate you guys checking us out. In the future, we're going to be going through the history of Nintendo in general, from its start in Japan all the way up to, current day with the Nintendo Switch and what is in the future for Nintendo. But again, thank you for checking us out. I appreciate everybody coming and listening to, me sitting here and ramble for about 20 minutes. And check us out, subscribe to us, and we'll see you soon. Take care.